Hello and welcome to Curtains and Lights, a podcast where we discuss movies directly after watching them. Here's Alex,
And here's Jannik.
and today we're discussing The Odd Couple, a 1970 movie directed by Gene Sachs. And there will be spoilers from here on out. All right, so we're back for the main part of the podcast, and as usual, we're going to start off by a short recap of the movie. So the movie starts like we already said, there's spoilers, so don't don't expect to not be spoiled. So here we go. So the movie starts off with Felix Unger, which is one of the main characters, wanting to kill himself but not being able to because he's like of a hypersensitive guy, if you know what I mean. And then it pans to the other main characters being in a poker round, and then Felix Unger goes to the other characters in the poker round, and it becomes apparent that he wanted to kill himself because like his wife was done with him, and like his wife is done with him, so he decides to move in with the other main character, who is what was his name, Oscar Madison, right? And during that, while that happens, Oscar Madison is like a really messy guy, like he's not very organized and stuff. Well, like Felix Unger is like almost like you could say he's like clinically clean, like in an unhealthy way almost. So
I wouldn't say almost.
yeah, I would say most definitely, yeah. So like there's that really interesting dynamic going on, and throughout the movie, you can see that they're having like their issues, and at the very end, not at the very end, but like in the like to the end of the movie, Oscar invites two girls over to get Felix on different thoughts, but it backfires because but like Felix starts crying, and the two girls that come over cry as well, and at the very end of the movie, they get so like Oscar gets so pissed off at Felix that he kicks him out, and then when Felix comes to retrieve his stuff, he has actually he doesn't come, but Gwendolyn, which is one of the girls, comes over, and it's revealed that Oscar that Felix moved in with the two girls. Yeah, that's the short recap. I really butchered it, but I hope you kind of understood it.
Did we ever do a recap for a movie?
What?
All right. So, what are your thoughts? Yeah, I don't really know where to begin. Obviously, this is like much less of like a thematically dense movie than the ones we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
But it obviously has some themes. For example, depression is, I guess, the biggest, or at least like the theme at the start of the movie that is given like the most time to be deconstructed.
Which one? Which one? Sorry, I was.
Depression and suicidal.
Oh yeah, right. Oh yeah, right.
So like at first, when Felix shows up late for the poker round, and all the other characters in the poker round already know about his potential suicide attempt, they basically freak out and don't know how to handle the situation at all. They don't they overcompensate. They don't let him like even go to the bathroom on his own, or like freak out at the thought of it. And I don't know. It kind of shows like how sort of like unprepared these people are for this sort of situation, especially like back then in the 60s, where talks about depression weren't as commonplace as these days.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that's completely not connected to what you just said, but one scene that I just want to get out of the way because I want to talk about it, is the scene where the two girls are over, but they're not crying yet. Like both of us laughed really hard at that scene because it was like you could feel how cringy it was for everyone involved, right? And I just want to point out how well that scene was executed, in my opinion, at least.
Sure. What about it? Like, what specifically?
Like the way like Felix isn't saying a single damn word, and then all of a sudden he just said it's supposed to rain on Friday, and everyone is just like, okay, cool. It's like the I like turtles of conversation, you know?
Yeah, yeah. He's basically, because of his like current like depression and hang up because of the divorce. Um, he's like unable to properly socialize.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we should get into the depression aspect of the movie more. Like, you started it off, so I think we should get in depth with that a bit.
Right.
Um, all right, so you want to go or I should go? You can go.
Okay, so relatively early in the movie, Oscar takes out Felix for a walk to talk about, his divorce, how he's feeling, and so on.
Yeah,
And and I don't remember exact quote, but like Felix says he doesn't feel like a person, or he feels like his personhood isn't like worth anything. And and uh and Oscar like brings up like all of his like character quirks, like the fact that he's like extremely cleansy, um, that he's very like tidy, and but also that he right now has a depression. He brings that up like as a feature of being a person. So I thought that was like pretty interesting because like the depression caused Felix to not feel like a person, but then Oscar like retorts that exactly makes you a person because you feel stuff.
yeah, like when depressed people feel like they're like nothing and they're like worthless and like there's nothing interesting about them, but well in reality, like they have like all their like weird quirks and so on. Is that what you're trying to say?
Right, but also that like the depression itself like makes someone a person because like for someone to have feelings, they would be a person, right? Like
Yeah, exactly.
depression is like a pretty complex emotion. It's not just like something like something like physical, like pain um or I don't know, hunger. Like these are uh like kind of higher emotions, more complex emotions.
Hmm. Yeah,
There's like kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs again, right? Like the
hmm,
lowest level is just physiological, like food and
hmm.
and so on. Then there's like something like safety that is already like the emotion to feel unsafe is already a bit higher on the
Yeah,
complexity
exactly.
scale
Yeah.
than like hunger, for example.
Mm.
And and uh, like
Like,
feelings of a depression are like it's incredibly complex, and like so that is like what Oscar meant, like that complex emotion like makes him a person.
I know what you mean. Yeah, it's kind of like a way, like you mean, like hunger is so like a basic emotion. It's almost like a bodily, it's a bodily sensation, but in a way, it's like an emotion, and it's very abstract. Like it's a very abstract bodily sensation, like depression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
one thing.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Like I would even say like depression is not really like an emotion. I would say it's more like a general mood, if you know what I mean. Like of course it's like an emotion, but it's more like when you're depressed
Oh
and you
yeah,
see
yeah,
like a really funny video, like you can still laugh out loud if like unless you're like
yeah,
super
yeah, yeah. It's not like a
it's not like
immediate emotion. It's just like a general emotion, like for a prolonged period of time, right? But within
right.
that prolonged period of time, you can still have like differing emotions, like sadness and happiness, and so on.
Yeah, right. It's not like an how's it called? It's like it's not like an acute emotion that is like when you hit like your finger, like you feel acute pain, or like when you win the lottery, like you're acutely happy, right? But
Right.
like it's not something acute, like unless like you're
Yeah.
laying in bed and
It's
thinking
it's
about
long term, not short term.
yeah.
Um.
Yeah. I think you've taken more notes than I have, so I think it would be actually better if you would start off because I've literally only taken like 3 notes. Yeah, one thing I want to point out too that's also not related to the whole depression aspect is like the intro sequence of the movie. It's like fucking long. I think it's like over like 10 minutes almost. But I,
Yeah,
but
it
I
was kind um
but I absolutely love that intro sequence because like I absolutely love the song. I love how like the intro sequence like paused to show like him and then it goes on again while he's just walking around. I think that's really well executed. I just want to point that out. And I think like I think the whole movie like it just like the whole I'm looking for the word, I can't find it, like impression, like the whole impression of like the first impression of the movie is like it's like very calm, like it's not an action movie, like it's the polar
you
opposite of
mean
an
like the
action movie.
tone of the
Yeah,
movie?
that's right, right, exactly, like the tone of the movie is like very calm, but it's still like really interesting, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's generally the tone of the movie is like a lot more subtle. It's not very goofy comedy. It has like some like goofy aspects, but it's like more like character driven, and it has like prolonged scenes that aren't really with any jokes, you know?
Right,
Um
where it's just like the interaction that's either funny
yeah,
or
I was
interesting,
kind of
you know.
surprised by this because I expected more like a Billy Wilder style comedy like that. The comedy that you once showed me, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, the East
Yeah, I know.
Germany, West Germany
Yeah.
comedy, like that.
Mhm.
That was like kind of style of older comedy that I don't really like because it's like I don't know, the tone just feels off. Um, it's like way too hyper, I guess, in some
Mhm.
sense. But I really enjoyed this aspect of the movie that these characters felt pretty real. Like even though they were exaggerated, of course, to like show the contrast between them, the dynamic felt real, and
Yeah,
also like the way people talked and like the scenes they were in. These all felt real.
yeah. I kind of knew you wouldn't. I kind of knew you weren't expecting this kind of movie. Like I don't know why. I just knew it. So but I'm glad you noticed it. Like I know. I prefer this movie over 1, 2, 3 though, like by a large margin. So
Yeah, the 1, 2, 3 was kind of fucking garbage.
really, I mean, I kind of like it still, but I really prefer this movie. So
All right. Um, um, what else? So, uh,
yeah.
I don't know. There's like a lot of like um credit to this movie where like they go like kind of in depth to sort of praise um what do you what's his name again, Felix, to praise his like emotional vulnerability. Like
Mhm.
you would expect from like a comedy movie of the late 60s to be like not very like not very chill with like very emotional men and like people who are going to through like depression and issues like that, but it actually like paints a pretty sympathetic picture.
Yeah. Right.
Of course at the beginning the
Mhm.
his friends are kind of assholes to him in the way they deal with his suicidality, right? But
Mhm.
that's like the joke. Like the joke isn't on him for being suicidal. The joke is on these people for like
Failing
misunderstanding
to
the
deal with it.
situation.
Mhm.
Also, um, also in the talk with um, uh, the scene where they walk like around the block, and uh, Oscar is like very understanding, and he Felix blames himself for his divorce, right? Which is
Yeah.
like a common thing for depressed people to do, for blaming themselves for their misfortunes, like more than actually they are at fault, right?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
this comes up like later again when the two British women are over, where one of them says, "It's refreshing to see a man to speak so highly of the woman he's divorcing."
Mhm.
Because like you can like you can like feel that like usually at that time period, especially in movies, like divorces would like divorcing husbands would probably be pretty like sexist in how
Yeah,
they like view their wife, probably because
exactly.
of like anger and like a lot of like really toxic emotions against their divorce.
Yeah, like the general zeitgeist of like the 1960s was like not very like it's always like there like every woman has like his man like or a man has his woman and they're not like equal in a way. And when it's
Yeah,
divorced, like it's the fault of the woman or so. Like I believe until like 1970 in Germany, when you were divorced, like you could be divorced either guilty or not guilty, right? And they
yeah,
yeah
some
like
some shit.
they like
Um,
stuff like that.
yeah, so and in this movie, it shows like an alternative. The person isn't angry at his former wife, but at he's kind of just sad that it
When the way
all
it went.
went away, and he's congratulated for that. The women, the British women, like not only like accept that and like not belittle him, but actually like encourage him. In the end like him more
Oscar.
than Oscar,
Yeah,
because
right.
Oscar tried to be like very smooth talking and like very like typically like a womanizer, right? But
Yeah, right.
I have trouble with the names. Felix has like he was like way more serious and way more like emotional, but that in the end like actually like um m- made him like these women like respected him more at the end for it.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is one of the movies that when you see it more often, like it gets better because like you're noticing all these little details that you haven't noticed before. Like there's like I've seen it like 8 or 9 times, and there's like details like you wouldn't even get them. Like they're really good.
Like
Um,
what?
like for example, the whole thing, like the whole situation, like where they had that first poker night and Felix was like cleaning everything up, like even though like you get everything the first time, like it doesn't really like it's not really like you don't get the full effect of it. Like even though you physically like your brain gets it, but still like you don't appreciate it like the first couple of times until you go like, oh right, he's saying that too. You know what I mean? Like for
Yeah,
example,
for
like for yeah.
okay, one example of like a joke I didn't get, but you
Mhm.
like explained to me is like the one guy, the guy with like the very high voice. He
Mhm.
kept saying that he was like
Leaving at
kept like
12.
leaving at 12 because he needs to catch a plane tomorrow, and he was. And then like a couple minutes later, like when Felix comes to Oscar's home, um, he like brings up that like oh like take your time again to be like
Yeah,
to Felix. We can like stay to 3 or 4 a.m. and I didn't think that was like funny because I didn't get it, but like you told me that was like a reference to like him um constantly like worrying about the time. It's pretty
exactly.
funny.
Yeah, like that. Like there's like a lot of these kinds of things scattered throughout the movie.
Yeah, do you have
Uh,
another example?
one other thing that's like it's like kind of okay at the very big, like the thing like with the coasters of like the cups. Like the first thing he says, like they're gonna make small rings on the table, and then he says, and then Felix says they're gonna make small rings on the table, and then Oscar says we don't want small rings on the table, and then Felix says we don't want small rings on the tables, right? And like throughout the movie, I don't know if you've noticed it, but he was like throughout the movie there was numerous instances of Felix giving Oscar some kind of coaster. It's just little details like this, that you
Mhm.
don't notice while watching the movie for the first time. Like these are one of the things I really appreciate about this movie. Um, another storyline that was that's kind of neglected in our analysis so far is the storyline between Oscar and his wife. And
Right.
I this is actually the first viewing that I actually really got this. Like this viewing for me, I focused more on Oscar instead of on Felix. Like when you view it for the first time, like obviously you focus on Felix, right? But
Right.
like I focused more on Oscar in this viewing, and I noticed, for example, that at the very beginning of the movie, like he hadn't, like he was late on his checks, and like his wife was evil to him, like you're late on his checks, like you have, and she's Oscar said you have the awful language in front of your children and so on, and then she just hangs up, right? But at the end of the movie, she is like friendly and him, hey, the check came, and you know what I mean? Like even though you can't
Right.
hear it, like
Well,
it's heavily,
because Felix like made him improve as a person, right? Because he was like really disorganized. That's kind of like Oscar's arc to become more orderly because living together with Felix, like Felix is this very orderly person, and Oscar is like a complete slob. So he like improves himself by being like more, or he's still like Oscar in the end, but like being more like a functioning member of society, I guess. And
yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah,
One other thing, like, yeah, that's like one thing that I've really noticed, like throughout the movie is like with Felix, it's obviously more apparent because, well, Felix is like insane. Like at the beginning of the movie, you would call him insane, right? Like he has like OCD or some kind of disorder, right? But one thing,
right.
but,
He
yeah, but
has
like
like a lot of like allergies, and like he doesn't like the AC. He he um
like
he,
it's heavy.
he has like chronic back pain whenever he does like literally anything, and so on.
I mean, he doesn't really have the allergies. Like it's heavily implied. He's just
Right, right, right.
like
He is like hyperventilating.
yeah, I mean, but like they're like Oscar has its arc, and one thing that I really appreciated, like especially like even the small side characters that are like they're relevant to the persons in universe, like they're not relevant to us. Like what were their name? Like Vinny, Murray, Speed, and I believe Roy, like the other poker guys, right? Like they're not like very relevant from like a movie perspective, but like for the in-universe perspective, like they're really important because they're obviously their best friend, right? But
Sure.
but I've realized like especially when watching again, like you notice that they're also like really thought out, like and good, like well written characters. Like for example, like Vinny, like that whole thing, oh, we're gonna play until like 3, 4 a.m. Like that whole thing, or Murray, how he's like not able to not be a cop, but in the end he's actually like doing like a favor and actually searching for Felix. Or
Right.
Roy at the very beginning being like very pessimistic, being like, oh well, he's probably already killed himself already, but in the end being like, I hope we can find Felix, and you know.
Right. Dude, I just remembered a thing that is kind of like relevant to a theme we discussed before, but like kind of finished discussing.
Yeah.
Um, but I forgot to bring it up. When we were discussing about how it benefited Felix when he finally like started getting like emotional.
Yeah.
There was this conversation where like earlier in the movie between Oscar and Felix um, where Felix wants to like throw a cup but then hesitates and doesn't.
Yeah.
So Oscar says like he should like get emotional and like let it out, but
Mhm.
um, but Felix is like very like hesitant. He doesn't want like emotions to get a hold of him. It's like a very like stoic philosophy,
Mhm.
and yeah, I kind of like that this movie like proves Felix wrong in the end. Or doesn't really prove him wrong, but like Felix himself like um, experiences that he's wrong because he gets emotional and it doesn't like hurt him and actually like helps him.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so this movie is kind of anti-stoic, which is cool as fuck because stoicism is kind of dumbass philosophy.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really appreciate about this movie. What are other subplots there? So like another small detail that like I mean you get it while watching it the first time, but like it's one of these things like I don't know when you're watching a movie again, you also have like these scenes that you're just looking forward to, like for no real reason other than just want to see.
Sure.
And like one of these scenes that you really appreciate it, like when you watch it multiple times, is the one where they're sitting there the first poker night after Felix is there, and Felix has like that like made like the sandwich, like the BLT sandwich, and like Murray and Vinny are like, "Oh, the sandwich is so good. He cuts the crust off, and it's so tasty." And then they
Yeah.
really like the cucumber. Like I really appreciate that. Like they
The
thought of
pickle.
this small detail. Like I appreciated that
Yeah,
so.
I really like that scene. You don't watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but I feel like Felix has like major like Charles Boyle energy. He's my favorite character on the show.
Mhm.
Uh, Charles Boyle isn't like depressed or anything, but he is also like he isn't like extremely like orderly to that extreme, but he's also like a gourmet and a chef and like very like particular about like his artistic taste.
Mhm.
Uh, I felt like even though it wasn't like Felix himself talking in that scene it still also kind of reminded me of Charles from Brooklyn Nine-Nine because like the way like they described like a BLT sandwich was like so extremely particular and like a very passionate about like a very simple food. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I definitely like saw parallels to Brooklyn Nine-Nine there.
All right. One other thing I've like realized is that how do I say it best? Oh yeah, like that also like the two ladies like even they're like they're like really fleshed out in a way too. Like there's like literally like this movie like normally there's like in every series or every movie there's like characters that are main characters, then there's like side characters, and then there's like minor characters, right? But one thing that I really appreciate about this movie is that there's like no in between. Like every character, even like the more side charactery ones, like the other guys from the poke around, like are really fleshed out and like thought out. You know?
Sure. Well, not as fleshed out as the main characters, though, right?
Well, obviously, yeah, obviously, but like there's still like for like compared to the amount of time they're on screen, they're comparatively fleshed out. You know? Like
Yeah,
there's a lot of thought going into the small interactions.
right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't really have like much more to say. I have like a few more notes that aren't really like connected to anything else.
All right. Okay, I'm all done with my notes. I just had three, so.
Um, I really like that like match cut where they're bowling and then it cuts to the pool table.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a really good. I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, I don't know. It doesn't. I don't can't really elaborate on that. It's just like it's a good match cut and
Yeah.
um
I
yeah. So
really
there's
like
like
the.
this other theme that is like way less like um way less pronounced, but it's still kind of there. That like um I mean it's in the title of the movie even like that Felix and Oscar kind of like become a couple themselves, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like you know what queer theory is, like queer film theory.
No, I don't. Like I
Like
should know, but I don't.
it's basically like a film analysis tool that like um ana- analyzes like movies through a queer lens, even like sometimes even though like um they weren't intended to be like LGBT movies, but
Yeah.
like it's like there's still something there, you know.
Yeah.
So
I
there's like yeah,
yeah.
so there's like this one comment of like um Vinny and the other poker guy when they were leaving because they were like fed up with like the house being too clean, the apartment being too clean, and so on.
Mhm.
They do like a kind of like casual homo about like them being like playboys, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could say like queer theory, like analyzing movies like in a way where like queer, like non-LGBT movies, like I would lean myself up. Can you say that in English? Lean yourself out of the window. Like I'm gonna go on a
Yeah, you
stretch
can.
here. I'm gonna go on a stretch here, and I'm gonna say it was very likely like intentional. Like I mean, like there's a very obvious like not bromance, but like there's a
Yeah.
very obvious like
Oh yeah,
homo-romantic relationship going on.
I didn't mean that like queer theory exclusively analyzes movies that like aren't intended to be queer. It's just like
Yeah,
it analyzes movies like through a queer lens, like whether or not it's intended, right?
yeah. There's actually like that's a bit tricky because there's like actually like another movie named I think like in German it's called Ein verrücktes Paar, and this one is called Ein seltsames Paar, which is
Mhm.
actually with the two same actors, and there's like also that weird romance thing like point out. Like I'm not sure. I think it's not a continuation off of this movie,
Right.
but it has the same actors. I just gotta look it up. Hold on.
Okay,
Where is
I
it?
can read off the Wikipedia page of queer theory a bit, right? Queer theory is a field of critical theory that emerged in the early 1990s of the
Mhm.
fields of queer studies and women's studies. Queer theory includes both queer readings of text and theorizations of queerness itself. Um, so, uh, wait, and there's like a strong like component about like queer film theory, like that's a strong part of it.
All right. So I just looked it up. There is actually a second part to the movie, and it's called The Odd Couple 2. Like it's a very creative name, I know. Uh, and it's um and it's a continuation of that movie.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we're gonna watch that in another podcast too, but not now. I'm not gonna go into detail about that now. And it just continues on like the weird interaction between these two. Although like I've seen the other movie, like it's not nearly as good as this one. Like I'm just
Right.
gonna, yeah, like this one just nails it, you know?
Yeah.
Do you have any notes left? Because if not, I would go on to the conclusion.
Well, like, yeah, I don't really have any notes left.
All right,
Oh,
so
one thing more. Uh,
yeah.
kind of like in today's 2020 context, it kind of seems like funny to me that imagine these two people would be like quarantined together. It would
Oh
be
my
like a nightmare for both of them.
Yeah, that would be pretty horrible. Like, I mean, in a way, they're like quarantined together, but it's like not because of like a disease, but
Yeah, well, they're roommates. That's like way less stressful than actually
yeah,
being quarantined.
yeah, exactly. Although,
Or
although, like in the end, it's very heavily implied that they're like, even though like they're like they go away like in a fight in a way, like it's heavily implied they're like still friends, you know?
sure,
All right, I'm gonna go on to the conclusion, right?
right.
All right, so we're here for the last part of the podcast, which is the conclusion. And as we do it, the one who chooses the film doesn't get to do the conclusion first, so Yannick can start with his conclusion.
All
All right.
right, so I enjoyed this movie. This is definitely like the lightest movie so far, and like the least like I guess the least like discussion worthy movie out of all of the ones we had so far. So it kind of made for a shorter podcast, but that doesn't mean that it's like a worse movie. I definitely like enjoyed it, and yeah, I really like the characters. I really like the tone of it. That it wasn't like like goofy all the time. It had like serious times, and it felt like realistic. Like these characters would be like real people, and just like the situation is kind of funny. Not that like the whole universe is like completely ridiculous. So I really enjoyed that about it, and I would give it a 7 out of 10.
All right, so I would probably, I mean, I've seen it like oftentimes, and at the beginning, I thought it was like a 5 out of 10. Like when I saw it first, I was like 10, and I didn't really get it. But now that I've actually seen it like very often, and I don't know why, but this watching like really kicked it for me. So I'm gonna say it before. I think like in my opinion, it's like a 9 out of 10. Like that's my opinion about this movie. I really appreciate it because like you appreciate it more the more you see it. Because like I really appreciate like the character interacts. Like the story itself is like I don't want to say it's bland, but it's like not like I mean if I would spoiler this movie to you, like you would probably be like, oh, okay, like it's not like too big of a deal, but like the character interactions that like you couldn't possibly explain them, and that's the thing like I really enjoy about this movie. And like in a way, like it's like you said, like it's realistic, like it's almost like it's like a like not super realistic obviously, but it's like a story that your life could tell, like life writes the best stories, and it's like one of these things that like if I would never even be able to come up with something remotely like this movie. So I really appreciate this movie, and I would give it a 9 out of 10. So yeah. So do you have any idea what movie we're gonna pick next week?
Right. It's either gonna be 2001: A Space Odyssey or 12 Angry Men, which also stars the guy that plays Vinny in this movie. So these are both of these movies are tier 1 movies for me. So like my part of my top 6 movies of all time.
Okay.
I'm not sure which one I'm gonna choose now, but it's probably gonna be one of those two, and I'm really excited.
All right. So yeah, I think that's it. Goodbye.
Bye.